Okay, welcome back. So we're going to get into the first sort of design decision that was made by the vibe coding system that I want to change. And I'm curious to be able to make a change here, sort of direct it to say, here is what I don't want, and perhaps just let it go wild and make these sort of designed or almost philosophical architectural decisions and just continue on to make all the changes in the file. So here's an endpoint. We're at main.rs. So this is being able to get the parameters from the query string. In this case, let's see, parameters is a query, and it's turning the query into a hash map of string pairs. And so this is manually extracting out the field of view and the tripod tilt parameters from the query string, parsing it, and if you look at the type here, it's type option. And then in the handlers, the get camera for frame with parameters is also taking in options. And what's interesting is these options here then are, let's see where it's used. Yeah. It's doing, it's treating these as optional. And the design decision that I want to have is these should not be optional. It was optional here. And this is sort of me talking. I see this a lot where the decision is often made to do a defensive programming sort of it's defensive programming. That's sort of the reason why people say, well, you should do it this way, because if you don't pass in the option here, we want to have some sort of default thing to do. And my position on this is that these should not be optional. Passing in or calling this without defining this is an error. And we shouldn't just do something inferred. I want everything to be very explicit. So if you call this and you haven't done this, you get an error. You don't get the result back. So really the idea is, we error early and we stop the operation, and we don't put in the code a lot of checks to make sure that we're not, we're going to be able to get a reasonable result given bad data. My philosophy is we just don't have bad data. If you have bad data, you just stop and you correct that bad data because it's wrong to begin with. And anything that we do further downstream to do mostly the right thing is you're just masking the problem, even if you throw up errors or whatever. So let me show you some other parts of the code that is exhibiting this sort of defensive programming. Let's just do our best effort and just give a result even if it's wrong. So it didn't take me long to find it. So here we go. This is actually the half field of view and the tripod tilt that we were looking at before. All I did was control tabbed over to the first tab that showed up code, and it was right here in front of me. This is, even though there's this console warn, nobody looks at the console anyway. And even if you do, when you start doing this, you compile so much noise in the console that people just ignore this. So if half field of view is not a number, or it is, this is a problem. And what I don't want to do then is just, return here. That's another thing that people do is they're just like, okay, we're just going to return if it didn't happen. And that's not a good answer either. So setting it to 40 or 0 is not good because you get a result. The user interface works, but it's just wrong. The 40 is not the right answer. 0 is not the right answer. The right answer is whatever it should be. So we don't allow this to happen at all. Let's maybe look at another. So this is really another indicator for me that there are problems because video URL, saying, okay, this is sort of an optional thing. It can be this or undefined. Doesn't make sense. We shouldn't create a video player if we don't have a URL. The on frame change, like maybe that's something if it's a more adaptable sort of thing, but we need to know what the frame change is. We need to know what the frames per second is. So having default values, that's maybe okay, but we can fight about that a little bit if we want to. But what we're going to see here then is if we search for like video URL, let's go back there. Oops, sorry. Video URL. There's going to be all this defensive code in here. Yeah. If we don't have a video URL, then it's going to just pick something. This isn't right. Now we're tied to API config. This component shouldn't be tied to some sort of system configuration. That's just wrong. And it's done this way because we're like, okay, maybe if we don't pass in the video URL, we're going to figure it out. Like, no, you just say we're gonna pass in the video URL. So you have all of these little if checks. There are different paths that it's going to take depending on how you may have called it. And like this if check is fine. This is a way to, I don't want to do work if the if there isn't a video frame. This is okay. I really look at all the if checks because you're taking all these different paths and every sort of thing that you have to do this way, you're both allowing bad calls to be put in and you are sort of multiplying or it's almost an exponential growth depending on how it spans out, is different paths that you sort of have to look at and test if you're doing this sort of thing. So yeah, that's the first sort of decision that was made, and it was definitely part of like this is often done. And we want to nip this in the bud because this is a problem. It makes it almost untestable. It increases the coupling. It is masking errors. And I so much would rather it error out and we fix the error than it does something close to what we may have wanted it to do. And now we're getting bad results. So sort of the motivation behind what we're doing, what I want to do here. And so with that idea of here is our architectural design philosophy behind how we want to deal with this, let's take this out so we don't have all of these little off branches.